reading slumps really get hardcore bookworms down, in my experience from talking to people on Discords and places like that. It's one of the few things I think connected to the reading hobby, if you want to call it that, that seems to be a really negative experience. You know, people don't like books, but they move on to a new book, even if they're annoyed at the old book. But the reading slump is a thing where people just, they love reading and they can't read anymore. So it's, you know, their joy has been ripped away from them. So I want to talk about avoiding them. And I speak from the position of, I would describe myself as never having had a reading slump. What I mean by that, and by that I'm saying I've never had this specific thing, that I am in a position mentally, physically, where I simply cannot read anything. And I can't get any energy to read anything. And that's depressing, particularly as a result of that. Now, the closest I've gotten was during university, my undergraduate, where I had a lot of extra reading. I had lots of classroom reading, and I kind of added on lots of extra reading around that. And so it wasn't really a slump. I read lots of stuff, but my reading record represents it less accurately. Also, university was really busy, but my reading record less accurately represented what I was reading. I still read a couple of books a month. I read plenty of academic stuff that might get onto the record or not, but on the whole, I was reading less for various reasons. But in general, I've always read a lot. Anytime I've been working, anyway, generally speaking. And so, in that sense, hopefully I've got some tips that'll be helpful. I think one thing is that, like, everyone is going to have different experiences of this because of different psychological states. And there are other pieces of advice out there. I'm not going to give every piece of advice I have heard or seen. You can watch other videos for that. This is not the clearinghouse for every idea about how to deal with reading slumps. This is my experience. And I think I've got 4 pieces of advice that helped me. And so you may find them helpful. Add more in the comments below. The first is just chill out. And this may sound kind of almost point missing. Well, I don't want to be in a reading slump. Tell me how to get out of it. That might be what you're wondering. But the first point is to recognise that reading is a significant good, but it is not the ultimate good. It's not the prime good. And so you don't want to ever get distracted by feeling bad about the fact that you can't focus on books. You know, you're not a bad person for it necessarily, unless it's because you're so distracted burning books or something. I don't know. You need to just know that sometimes, look, if you've read loads this week and you're a bit frazzled, then it's probably right just to go and do something else. Go and play softball, go and watch a film, go and play a video game, go and talk to people if you can stand it. Do something else, that's fine. The first thing is a non-piece of advice, anti-advice. Just forget about it. It doesn't matter. You do not need to read right now. It is okay if you don't read right now. The second thing is, this is actually maybe the biggest thing for me, is switch genre. Because the first thing is, I don't worry about it too much if I don't want to read. The second thing is switch genre or format. And for me, for instance, this is just a personal experience. When I am very mentally frazzled, I find it harder to read non-fiction, at least any kind of serious non-fiction that requires, I guess, I don't know, it's tough. That requires basically my own narrativization of it, because I'm reading factual accounts. I might be able to read a very, very thrilling biography or history book, but on the whole, non-fiction is something which is, most of it will be less easy for me to read when I'm worn out. And so I read a lot more fiction when I'm in that kind of position. And it means that I can read a lot of Agatha Christie mysteries. I can read whole series of particularly reasonably light fiction very quickly if I'm in that kind of mode. And so I switch genre from a non-fiction stint to a fiction stint. But and the same is true in reverse, that if I'm really stuck into some kind of non-fiction material and I really want more, I just go with that and we'll just read in that direction. I don't worry too much about like, but I thought I'd read that this week or this month. Doesn't matter. On the whole, unless I have a hard deadline, I will just switch to where my brain is. And so cultivating different genres, even if you yourself aren't necessarily someone who thinks you read different genres, that's what you should do. I think is a major thing. Expand your reading palette. So you could say, well, but I don't read anything other than fiction. You know, most of my booktube viewers on this channel at least are sci-fi fantasy readers, and that's the main thing they are. But maybe consider, okay, well, graphic novels. Maybe consider a sort of related field of non-fiction that kind of connects to it, like history of fiction, biography of an author, that sort of thing. Just switch so that or just a very different type area of even the genre. So short stories, novellas. One thing is that you will be able to read a 10-page short story even if you hate it. Generally speaking, you can gin yourself up that much even if you can't face reading the big book. So switch to something related within the genre. Generally speaking, a change is as good as a rest in this situation. Third piece of advice, and this is also important, and I understand it's harder than it sounds, but you've got to protect time. By that I mean, if you really want to dedicate time to reading, it's okay if you don't have time. Who cares? But if you really want to dedicate time to reading, and you're struggling to find time for it, you can probably match up the problem and solution quite quickly, can't you? You really want time for reading, you can't find time for it. Well, you're going to have to find time for it. And what you say is, I don't know, on a Tuesday morning, the kids are at nursery, and I have to do some stuff at house or in the office or wherever else, but I'm just going to read for an hour. Or I commute on the train. I'm going to work. I'm going to read then. You find a particular time which you can regularly repeat is an important point. The idea that it's a time that is, repeatable, so that you have pattern and rhythm, so that you always know you can come back to it. So I think that's the third thing is, 1, don't worry about it. 2, a change is as good as the rest. 3, if you want time, find time. It's all too easy to make excuses from a place of disorganisation. If you're really too busy, that's fine. But if there is spare time and you want to read, then prioritise reading and find regular slots for reading. And the final thing, and this is maybe less what I do, though it certainly has helped in the couple of cases where I have done it. But yeah, find buddies to read with, whether official buddy reads, where you're going to talk to people about it, or just a small one with 1 friend, 2 friends. And this is, I don't think you need to be accountable about your reading in any moral sense on the whole. But I think if you care enough about it, it may well be that it's a useful tool for you to be able to say to your friend, we're going to read this book together. Okay, check how I'm doing, and I want to be able to talk about the first volume of the book by the end of the month. The first 200 pages I'll have read by the end of the month. Let's talk about it then. So give yourself small goals, but bring other people in who you can talk to about it. I think that's a generally good thing, and that's one thing that BookTube and the BookTube Discords and Reddit and places like that are so good for, is that you're able to just talk about these books and find excitement and encouragement from other people to read stuff. So those are a very personal list of 4 ways I avoid reading slumps. Now, you're going to have other suggestions that will be better for you and maybe better for other people, so put them in the comments. And I guess, use this as an opportunity to share recommendations, whether it's tips for avoiding stuff, books that are really good, you think, for kickstarting interest, things like that. Anyway, till next.